Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to another edition of State Affairs. State Affairs is about history, politics, and power. On this edition of the program, we'll continue the discussion on Nigeria's first military coup. That is the January 15th, 1966 coup. A coup led by Kaduna Nzogu, Emmanuel Ifajuna, and Adewale Ademuyiga. We've been able to establish the origins of the coup. But we are not done with looking at the causes of the coup. We've been able to look at the character of some of the coupists, but we are not done. So as we discuss the coup, we'll discuss the politics of that time. The reason we have titled this edition January 15th, 1966 coup, the Travails of Democracy. Why the coup? What prompted the coup? How do we define the character of the mind that led to the coup? So let's look at it from what I have called larger and narrow perspectives. I make the point that ethnic aggressions are narrow perspectives. The reason they always lead to devastating ends. What happened in Rwanda was ethnic aggression, and it led to the Rwandan genocide. Ethnic aggression in the sense that the Hutus and the Tutsis took on themselves, and we know the consequences. In the true sense of the word, the narrow perspective that led to the Rwandan genocide was caused by the misunderstanding of their humanities. That the fact is that the Hutus and the Tutsis are the same. So how did they come to be defined as Tutsis, as Hutus, even when they speak the same language? Because they were bogged down by narrow perspective. So one point you should take away here is that ethnic aggressions are narrow perspectives. The reason they always lead to devastating ends. But ethnic appreciation is not a narrow perspective. Narrow perspectives are not moderating, they are not accommodating, and they are not respecting of others' intelligence. By these characteristics, narrow perspectives thrive to enforce and resist themselves, leading to violent aggressions. Was the January coup a narrow perspective? Some have said it was an Igbo coup. Others have said no, it was a coup to redeem the land. But narrow perspectives always lead to devastating ends. The counter coup of July 1966 was the reaction to the actions of January. If the actions of January led to a devastating end, like the Civil War, can we say that the January 1966 coup was a narrow perspective. I'll leave you to our lives, responding appropriately to changing conditions and seeking a larger perspective, our ways out of conflicts. Remember the Aburi Accord before the Civil War? Ojukwu led the Eastern region and Yakubu Gowon led Nigeria to Aburi in Ghana to discuss the future of Nigeria. Then they arrived at the Aburi Accord. Such discussions are called larger perspectives because they offer you the opportunity to negotiate, to understand each other. Because it's a larger perspective, they all left Aburi smiling. But when they got to Nigeria, they went into their narrow cocoons. And what was the result? The Civil War. Gowon interpreted Aburi Accord in his own way. And to Ojukwu and the Eastern region, on Aburi we stand. A larger perspective is powerful and attractive. It is the output of not holding on to a fixed position or identity in opposition to dispassionate judgment for progress. In that case, you are ready to build consensus. You are ready to talk. You are not saying it must be what I want. You are saying we can come to a meeting point to salvage the crisis of the moment. Larger perspectives bring opposing views to the realization of the ideas that bind them together and ensure beautiful outcomes. When you go to a conference to discuss the Constitution, it is a larger perspective. A well-managed conflict is a source of strength to the political process. Saying this, the competing groupings work together to expand the outcomes and attain inner peace and comfort, and they advance their collective wisdom. That is how great states are built. Is Nigeria a great state? So going through the Nigerian situation before and after independence, it was clear that the coup was coming. It was clear that the defining moment was coming. The signs were there, and Awolowo documented the signs in his book, The Travails of Democracy and the Rule of Law. The Travails of Democracy and the Rule of Law. Awolowo documented the signs of the time in this classic. And this is the original print of the book, not the reprint, the original print of the book. This was the first edition. And you can see the quality of the print. And this was done in Nigeria at the time. And it's quality print, original print of the work. These are scarce books. To see the original print of a work is to be happy. So we are going to read from this book to understand the travails of democracy. But before that, let's look at some of the latest stories in Nigeria. If you look at the front page of The Guardian, PDP decries insecurity as Kaduna denies abduction of 163 worshippers. The details of that story is on page 3, The Guardian newspaper. This is The Guardian. On the back page of The Guardian, AFCON 2025, an enchanting story and its final journey, written by Chidi Ansem Odinkalu. 50% of telco tariff hike leaves operators happier, consumers frustrated. IMF aligns with World Bank on Nigeria's 4.4% growth projection. Federal government to appeal judgment on attacks against journalists. Court strikes out Meta X as federal government rearraigns Showore on amended cyberbullying charges. You find the details of that story on page 30 of The Guardian. APC closes in on Kanu as state chairman hopeful of Yusuf's defection. It's like all the governors in Nigeria are going to join the APC before the elections. Is this the travails of democracy? You know, when these things begin to happen, you just see them as politics. But when the consequences show itself, then we begin to understand history. Sanwo-Olu signs 2026 4.4 trillion naira budget